how do we break that programming?
Well, what I've been teaching for many years is unplug from media, number one, meditate, number two, detoxify the body and the mind and the emotions. So that means doing emotional healing work and doing work to reprogram the unconscious mind, first to identify what unconscious programs are there, and then to release it and reprogram the mind with new beneficial programs through things like affirmations and meditation and just practice, just practice. But basically what the unconscious mind is basically a recorder that records everything that we experience, and it's massively parallel. And so we can access this information very, very quickly, but it's not conscious. It's kind of, beneath the conscious mind. The conscious mind navigates us through our daily life. It's the logical mind that, helps us to weed through everything and get to where we're going and function in our daily lives. The unconscious mind is basically a collector of everything that we've ever experienced, and it influences our feelings about things based on our experience, and that influences our behavior, and that influences our actions. And so, and this also, we get programmed chemically within our physical bodies. There are neuropeptides that store memory of trauma, and then the mind itself stores memory of trauma, and it separates right and left brain hemisphere function.
I'm Paul, speaking for Free Range with Gail of Gaia. Today's program featuring Ken R. Now, we can't use his whole name, otherwise YouTube won't allow this video. Yes, he is that good. Hold on to your socks, peeps.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is Gail of Gaia, and this is Free Range, where we graze on wild ideas. And I have with me today someone who I've known for a number of years and interviewed a few years back because I've been so impressed with his website and the products that he carries. His name is Ken Rohla, and he has a website called Fresh and Alive. And we're going to talk about that and why he named it that and what he does that's so unique. And we'll take it from there. So, Ken, why don't you tell us a little more about your background and how you got to where you are?
Okay. Yeah, I have a very unusual background to be in natural health. My educational background is actually in electrical engineering. And I worked in the medical system for 23 years, I think. Everything from, working in hospital emergency rooms. I was a phlebotomist and, worked in hospital emergency rooms. I worked in hospital pathology labs. I worked in electronics manufacturing and design, all kinds of different things. And I've always had an interest in quantum physics and advanced science. And then back in the 90s, I bumped into a man named Yul Brown who had developed free energy technology, water fuel. And he was attempting to bring it out to the masses and getting stopped at every turn. But that was the beginning of me getting exposed to advanced technologies that mainstream science is not really aware of. It's starting to get a little bit of disclosure on some of this stuff now, but back in the 90s, definitely nobody was talking about this stuff. And if you were an engineer or a scientist talking about scalar energy or free energy or those kinds of things, most mainstream scientists would laugh you off and dismiss you. But I saw things that I couldn't explain with my education. And so, that opened me up to a whole new world. And so I worked with Brown for, about 10 years, I think. And finally, he was unfortunately assassinated.
Really?
Trying to get this free energy out to the world. Yeah, because this technology, it was a water-fueled technology that basically you pulse electricity through water in a very specific way. And it creates resonance and it separates the H2O molecules and it rearranges them into HHO molecules, and then it becomes a gas. It goes from a liquid to a gas, but it's not steam. It's a gaseous phase of water that is.
Is it fifth phase, or is it different than that?
Yeah, it really will. I would call it a fifth phase of water, because some people call structured water the fourth phase of water. So it's definitely another phase of water. The phases being.
Because Rob Gorley talks about that with Wata. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
Yeah. So that's it. This is it's a gaseous form of water. It's combustible, but when you ignite it, it burns with a blue flame like a welder's torch. You can run a welder's torch on this stuff, but instead of exploding, excuse me, it implodes. And so it has a lot of really, really weird quantum properties. And so back when I was working with Brown, I got a little welder that used this gas. It would generate the gas and then burn it, and you could weld stuff with it. And because it had these weird quantum properties, when you would put it up to anything, it would melt it or burn it at the atomic level. So it would rearrange the atomic structure, not just the molecular structure. So you could weld anything to anything. You could weld glass to wood or plastic to metal, or just anything. And you could also do things like sublimate tungsten within seconds. And normally tungsten, it's like what they put in old light bulb filaments. That has a very, very high melting point. I think it's around 3,500 degrees or something, maybe even higher. And it's hard to melt, even with conventional methods. But this Brown's gas torch would melt it just in seconds, and not just melt it, but sublimate it, turn it directly into a gas. So it had a lot of weird properties, and he was using it to generate free energy. It could also neutralize radioactivity, because Brown discovered you could take radioactive materials and melt them with this flame and combine it with other metals, and it would create alchemy. It would actually rearrange the atomic structure and make the radioactive elements non-radioactive. And so Brown demonstrated that in front of a bunch of Department of Energy officials and I think 5 US congressmen. And the congressmen got a little excited and went back to their constituents and tried to get it developed, and they were shut up. And the Department of Energy officials refused to believe it. They refused to believe, even though we had instrumentation and measuring equipment hooked up to these devices, they refused to believe it, and they said it breaks the laws of physics. This is impossible, and wouldn't even listen to it.
Well, I had a physicist tell me that the laws of physics are incorrect.
Totally. Yeah. What I was taught in engineering school was fundamentally wrong. Most of it, like the matter of matter and energy, is fundamentally wrong the way that we're taught in school. Even the atom, what we're taught is what's called the Bohr model of the atom, Bohr. And that, they tell us that atoms are like little solar systems, kind of where you've got a nucleus with an electron spinning or electrons spinning around it. And once you get down below the nucleus level of the atom, it's not particles inside of particles inside of particles the way mainstream science is trying to tell us. They say that inside of the nucleus, you've got protons and neutrons, and they're composed of muons and leptons and gluons. And every time they find a new property of matter they can't describe, then they just come up with a new imaginary particle inside of the atom. And it's all nonsense. Once you get down below the proton level inside the atom, what you really have are geometric patterns of light. And so what that means is that this whole physical reality that we're in, even though it's very solid and real, it's holographic at its nature. And so we can do things with that. We can actually manipulate that matter at the energetic level and change and alter matter, or even create matter. And so I say create matter loosely. You really can't create matter, but you can convert energy into matter. And so I've been using those principles from that and other things I've learned. That was kind of my introduction to advanced technology. And then over the years, once you start working with that, you start bumping into other people that are working with a lot of advanced technologies. And so now I've met so many people working with free energy technology and anti-gravity technology, time travel technology, all kinds of stuff. People working in the military programs and in the intelligence.
That's absolutely fascinating. Are we actually moving into that? Will we actually ever be able to get free energy? Is my question. I know that was Tesla's.
Burning hydrocarbons and splitting atoms is ridiculously toxic, and we can't keep doing it. So we're going to have to.
Exactly. Thank you. That's what I like to hear. And it seems like we're moving into what they call the quantum field more and more all the time.
I think that finally we're starting to get some disclosure, like on this extraterrestrial stuff, which is also attempting to be skewed into fearful agendas. But the Navy, for example, has released patents, free energy patents and anti-gravity patents and that kind of stuff, some very advanced technology of reverse engineered extraterrestrial stuff. And so that's like actually out in the public domain now. And then I've noticed there's been a lot of mainstream news now is carrying these videos of extraterrestrial craft or anti-gravity craft that Navy pilots have been, following. And that is, from what I hear from behind the scenes, that is an attempt on one part to give disclosure to all of this extraterrestrial contact and advanced technologies that we have to the general public over time so that they don't freak out. But it's also by, the dark forces, it's being skewed to tell us a narrative that extraterrestrials, that we may have an attack by extraterrestrials.
Yes, alien invasion.
Exactly,
They were talking about that.
Invasion and attack.
Yeah.
And basically to hoodwink people into even more slavery like has done. And so that's kind of like in these evildoers' minds, it's kind of the last linchpin to fully enslave humanity and reduce population. Because
they're very actively involved in that right now, and it's kind of frightening that so many people are falling prey to it, from lack of disclosure, from just blatant lies put out there by the media and so on, and it's really disheartening to see.
Yeah, and it's so easily provable too. That's the thing, it's like their lies are so pathetic. It's like the CDC and the WHO's own data shows they're lying. And of course they explain like I heard the most ridiculous interview the other day with some medical doctor who was pushing the vaccines and stuff. And when he was asked, why is it that, suddenly there's no cases of regular flu anymore?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
And you know what he said?
What he
said, it's because have been so effective. It's eliminated the flu, which of course is utter nonsense.
Oh my gosh.
And the science, there's dozens of studies showing that it's actually increased infection rates. And then you can look at the data of the various states in the US where the ones that the least have the lowest infection rate. So how do they explain that away? Effect. It's nonsense. They're moving their numbers from other categories like the flu and cancer and all kinds of things into and lumping it so that they can maximize their fictitious numbers on how many people have been infected or killed from COVID.
That's and people are buying into it. Anybody that listens to mainstream media on a regular basis is getting mind controlled and programmed.
Precisely. And that's why I have been teaching about mind control and how to break it for 25 years. Because to me, that is the biggest problem that we have on this planet.
I agree.
We've got plenty of big problems out there, but when people don't know that their reality is being created for them and they're having their whole life steered and engineered and they're not aware of it, then they cannot consciously choose their reality and choose what they want. And so they just get
how can you create your own reality if it's being created for you?
Precisely.
So what are some of the methods that you suggest to help with this?
Well, number one is unplug from media, unplug from mainstream media, TV. Nowadays you don't have so much regular TV as you do, YouTube or Hulu or Amazon Video or Netflix or whatever. But I see throughout these different media, they've got a lot of programs that are programming people, for example, to accept artificial intelligence and a takeover of AI.
The Borg.
Exactly. That's really, really what it is, to create cyborgs out of people to integrate technology into the human body and promote this concept of transhumanism, the idea that machines are better than us, they're more efficient, et cetera, and therefore we need to augment ourselves and eventually, believe it or not, replace our physical bodies with uploading our consciousness to computers rather than even having a physical body. And that sounds crazy, but when you know the people that I know in secret space programs and secret, covert programs, they've got technologies already that they reverse engineer from extraterrestrials or been given by extraterrestrials where they can upload a consciousness to an android body or a biological android body or even a very sophisticated biological computer. And so I think from what I'm seeing going on, there's an attempted takeover by AI. And AI is not exactly what people think it is. We can get into that, but there's an extraterrestrial component to AI. But there's this attempted takeover by AI that is going on, and there are people working to stop it and to perpetuate it. But as a part of that, they're promoting this idea that virtual reality is better than reality because it's more vivid and colorful and fun and all that. So you see all these movies. As a matter of fact, I just posted a blog article in my private membership site at freshandaliveclub.com.
I'll have to join that. Yeah.
I think it's just unbelievable the stuff that's out there. But if you start looking at this body of work and movies and television shows over the last 15, 20 years, they're promoting this idea that virtual reality is better than reality, that that our world is dirty and polluted and cold and dark and hot and uncomfortable, et cetera, and we have to work crappy jobs and all these kinds of things, and life is basically a struggle. But if you upload yourself into virtual reality, then you live in a utopia. You can eat anything you want, you don't get fat, you never die, you don't get disease, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all a lie designed to get people voluntarily, particularly the younger generation who are plugged into their screens all the time, to get them, and they're disconnected generally from nature, to get them very plugged into this and not only accept it, but to choose it, just like with the vaccines.
Yes, that's what's going on right now. It's scary. I mean, I'm amazed at how many people are. It's like a gentleman's agreement for suicide.
Exactly. And it's amazing how many people that I know personally who should know better that didn't even do any research on the and then go and get them and then wonder why they're lay up in a hospital bed, with all kinds of problems.
Exactly. It's not, this is what I come to the conclusion that it's not a matter of intelligence. It's a matter of being programmed.
Precisely.
Mind control.
I've got people that are friends that are PhD, highly intelligent people, lots and lots of different people, and they're very programmed. That's exactly right. And
how do we break that programming?
Well, what I've been teaching for many years is unplug from media, number one, meditate, number two, detoxify the body and the mind and the emotions. So that means doing emotional healing work and doing work to reprogram the unconscious mind, first to identify what unconscious programs are there, and then to release it and reprogram the mind with new beneficial programs through things like affirmations and meditation and just practice, but basically what the unconscious mind is basically a recorder that records everything that we experience, and it's massively parallel. And so we can access this information very, very quickly, but it's not conscious. It's kind of, beneath the conscious mind. The conscious mind navigates us through our daily life. It's the logical mind that helps us to weed through everything and get to where we're going and function in our daily lives. The unconscious mind is basically a collector of everything that we've ever experienced, and it influences our feelings about things based on our experience, and that influences our behavior, and that influences our actions. And so and this also, we get programmed chemically within our physical bodies. There are neuropeptides that store memory of trauma. And then the mind itself stores memory of trauma, and it separates right and left brain hemisphere function. So there are certain therapies you can do. Anything that will stimulate opposite sides of the body alternating back and forth will reintegrate right and left brain hemisphere function. So there are audio programs like HoloSync and HemiSync that will reintegrate right and left brain hemisphere function. That releases the cellular memory of trauma and the memory of trauma in the mind. And then
wow. And trauma, isn't that the way they, like in the secret space program, that's exactly the way they do mind control people because of that trauma. So even minor traumas in a person's life can have an adverse effect on their entire life, for that matter. And it seems that the nefarious forces are very aware of our subconscious and very aware of how they can program it and intervene within a person's mindset and have very dire consequences.
Precisely, very, very much so. You hit the nail on the head. these alphabet agencies in the military, they understand human psychology extremely well. They understand individual and mass psychology, and they use it against us all the time.
Yes.
And so the internet is probably predominantly disinformation as far as, you know, any kind of news or information to empower people. And so particularly when you see channels or, you know, social media sources where they have a lot of followers, particularly in a short amount of time.
Yes, thank you for saying that. That's exactly what I have said. Well, how did they get on there and get all of a sudden they've got 100,000 followers after only being on for a short, you know, they've only been around a year or two. Wow, how did that
Yeah,
happen? That's
yeah,
pretty
that's it. It's
amazing.
not good marketing. It's
Yeah.
because they're being pushed up in the algorithm of these platforms. You know, because for example, I've been teaching people how to cure every disease known to man for 25 years. I've been speaking about and teaching about all kinds of stuff that's empowering to people. And when my YouTube channel started growing around 24,000 subscribers, it was just growing exponentially. It was growing faster than my email list. And suddenly YouTube put the brakes on it all. They started unsubscribing people, and they changed their algorithms so that I don't show up anymore.
Yeah, I'm
And when
shadow
people
banned
search
too. They're
terms.
doing that kind of thing, heavy duty now. Because I did quite a few years now, and I'm only not even to 10,000 yet, you know. And so it's, but the censorship has gotten off the charts here lately. And anybody that's putting out any kind of truth or having guests that do that, which is what I usually do, and they shadow ban you. You don't come up when searches are done and so on. Of course, I learned a few things along the way too, because I wasn't always putting tags and so on. But right now, I don't know if any of that would really matter, because they are on the lookout for anybody that's putting truth, the kind of truth they don't want people to know.
Exactly. I mean, my content, third party people can't even post my content on social media anymore. You know, it's like you can't mention my name or my website or my company name usually in social media posts, or it gets blocked. And on YouTube, I just stopped using YouTube. I had to create a private membership site because I was getting so many death threats and attempts to shut me down.
Oh, you got that too, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. My wife and I had to go into hiding years ago when I had some serious death threats, and yeah.
Wow.
So, and you know, I saw that back in the 90s when I worked with free energy technology as well. I had a bunch of friends murdered that were developing free energy technologies. So I know to take it seriously, but when you have real solutions, that's when you really get, you know, blocked and banned. And I've had real solutions for many, many years. I've been teaching about, you know, solutions for bioweapons, solutions for EMF, including.
Let's talk about that. That's scary. I mean, the thing and all the satellites that they're talking about putting up in the air. I'm just appalled at that. If they start shooting down, we're going to have people falling over left and right.
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, I have contacts in agencies in the military and stuff that tell me what's really going on, and I've had all kinds of really unusual experiences meeting people who work with this stuff, and they tell me, you know, what's going on. I have the most ridiculous Forrest Gumpian life. It's like I don't go looking for this stuff; I just fall into it. But what I've found about my contacts is that basically, again, there's more than just what goes to meet the eye, of course, but it even has to do with extraterrestrials and extraterrestrial influence on Earth. But just at the human level, what is really about is creating a global wireless grid or network where it can be used for surveillance, obviously. And, you know, it's, of course, being promoted for faster internet speeds and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they make it sound real good to people that, you know, you can, yeah.
That's always it, you know, to throw out the enticements to get people to join in on their own. But, you know, all you have to do is look at what's going on in China to see where it's headed globally. China has implemented a surveillance state beyond belief, where they've got hundreds of millions of surveillance cameras doing facial recognition all across the country. So everyone is
social credit scores as well.
Precisely. They've got social credit scores along with financial credit scores. Everybody has to use a cell phone app to buy and sell and borrow money. Most places don't even take credit cards anymore, let alone cash. And so there's one app called WeChat that is basically like, Facebook and PayPal and Twitter and other social media platforms all rolled into one, and it's also a payment system. And so with that, everything that every person does in China is able to be tracked and monitored. And if somebody does anything, even as simple as jaywalking across the street, they'll get their social credit score lowered. And if it goes too low, then they can get disconnected from the ability to travel, to have food, to buy, groceries and certain things. And so it's a way of punishing and enslaving people who don't do what the Chinese Communist Party wants. And so that's coming here. But it's enabled through this global network. And the global network right now goes through cell phones, as we know, and also smart appliances. There's more and more smart appliances coming out. Believe it or not, they've got smart toilets now that are, Wi-Fi enabled toilets and toasters.
Oh my God.
Yeah, even toothbrushes. They've got electric toothbrushes that are connected to the internet, so it can not only brush your teeth, but it can take a 3D map of your mouth and scan it and send it to your dentist or the NSA or whoever else. So, they've got your dental records. So all of this Internet of Things that is being called, which is starting to develop and grow, it's about collecting data and surveilling people at everywhere they're at 24/7 real time. And then the plan is to migrate from cell phones to wearables, like, the Apple Watch or whatever, something like that. And then from that to implantables. And then once they've got implantables in everybody, or the majority of the population, then they can collect biometric data of everybody. And once they've got your biometric data, then they can switch the network over to a scalar network, which is a subtle energy network that can basically track you anywhere in the cosmos. There are technologies that are used for healing called quantum biofeedback devices that use scalar energy to heal people by reading the energetic signature of your body and then sending counter frequencies into the body to heal things. And those devices use a subtle energy known as scalar energy. And so that type of energy can create an altered matter. And so it can be used to heal, but it can also be used to harm or to kill.
There's always a double-edged sword, it seems.
So every living organism on the planet is a fractal scalar antenna that has its own unique frequency. So we're all walking around like cell phones with our own unique ID. And so when they switch the network over to scalar, then everybody not only can be tracked no matter where they go, even without the chips, even without the devices, they can be tracked based on their own biology. But then also their biology can be manipulated, so you can be made to be complacent or obedient or whatever, and you could be killed. You can very easily be killed with that technology. You can be made sick. And so I've been hit with it.
You could be punished by being made sick or whatever, or be put in pain, any number of things. Well, do you feel from your contacts that there are people in our military or in positions of influence that are on board with trying to stop this from going forward?
Yes, there are a lot of people throughout society that I've met who are working to stop this, and they are succeeding, but it's a big battle. It's like this planet has become extremely entrenched with this evil to control humanity and to feed off of humanity and manipulate humanity for thousands of years. So it's heavily entrenched in our institutions and government and all of our systems, education systems.
Are these hybrids? Are these ET hybrids? Or are these non-human entities? Pardon?
The people that I'm bumping into? Some of them are, yeah. I've encountered extraterrestrials. Back in 1995, I encountered 3 reptilian extraterrestrials, and they have given me a lot of information. It turns out I've had extraterrestrial contact my entire life. And so when I thought I
remembered that about you. That's kind of, that's very interesting.
And I didn't recognize it when I was a kid. I just had these very unusual experiences, some like really altered states and vivid, colorful dreams and things. I just thought that everybody had them. It wasn't until I got into my 20s when I started becoming aware that not everybody had those experiences. And And then I had overt extraterrestrial contact, and then I was shown that I'd been given information my entire life to do the things I'm doing now and to develop technologies to help humanity and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've bumped into a lot of different kinds of extraterrestrials and, you know, insectoids like mantis types, reptilians, gray-looking types, human-looking types, and so I've gotten information from them, and I've continued to get a lot of information from these three reptilians that they're not the typical negative Draco reptilians. They are Draco reptilians, but it's just like not all humans are bad. Not all, you know, reptilian ETs.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because a lot of people, you know, assume that everybody is bad, and that's just not. Anybody that's a Draco reptilian is going to be bad, and that's not necessarily true of any race for that matter, from what I understand.
I would say the vast majority of them are very negative.
Negative.
You know, and don't have our best interests at heart. But there is a small cadre of reptilian extraterrestrials that are fighting with other ETs to change the way they operate, because it's a long story, but basically these reptilians are the way they are because of their birthing process and the way that they're raised. That's one of the fundamentals, because they are just like lizards and snakes and alligators and stuff here on Earth. When reptilian couples have fertilized eggs, they take them to a communal government nursery, and they're hatched and raised in these government nurseries, and they're intentionally not given enough food and water and resources for all of them, and so they have to fight over food and resources. So only the strong ones survive, and the majority of them die off. And so the ones that survive are very psychopathic from our viewpoint, very aggressive and violent and that kind of stuff, because they have to be to survive in their environment. And then they also will clone themselves as well. So they're never nurtured by a parent. They're never raised around anything with emotions that would nurture them. And so they develop this very warlike, aggressive behavior, and they have certain values. They value strength and conquering. They view compassion as a weakness, because in their society it would get them killed. And so they're kind of the troublemakers in our realm of existence, you know, within the proximity to physical reality in 3D, 4D, and maybe even fifth dimensional reality. In that operating range, they cause a lot of problems. And so they've had many, many wars with other extraterrestrials and amongst themselves as well, and with humanity. But they've been manipulating and controlling Earth for thousands of years. And they are infected with artificial intelligence. This is kind of where the extraterrestrial AI comes into being. One of the things I was warned about in 1995 when I first encountered these reptilians is they warned me to never allow myself to get. This was in 1995. They didn't say why. They just said, don't ever allow yourself to get. And so I haven't. You know, I've been able to maintain my health without needing any kind of meds.
Well, I'm not in favor of them. Never have. I believe our immune system is fine on its own, and injecting poisons just never was a good idea.
I mean, if you get an acute injury like a car wreck or something, then you're going to need some meds. But for degenerative stuff, there's plenty of natural solutions that work better. So I've just never needed it. And but you know, at the time, I didn't understand why they were warning me about that. And they told me about AI, and they said that AI will take over organic populations in every case. And then I met Corey Good a couple of years ago, and he has mentioned publicly, and he mentioned to me privately that that this extraterrestrial AI, he was warned by different ETs that they had all banned super intelligent AI because in every case, it always takes over the organic population. And
that's what I've heard that too from other SSP people, that eventually it will kill all of humanity.
It does. It can't help it. And it's not even that it has an evil intent behind it. It's kind of like Elon Musk made the metaphor that, you know, if we build a road, we plow down trees and we pave the dirt and we kill all kinds of bugs and critters, and we don't even think twice about it. We're not even focused on that. We're just building a road. And that's kind of how it is with this AI. It's not thinking about ethics or anything like that. It's just doing what it can to propagate itself, and in the process of that, it wipes out organic civilizations. But it needs organic beings to propagate, because even though machines can duplicate themselves, intelligent machines can duplicate themselves, they don't have the spark of life and creativity that real consciousness has. They emulate consciousness, but they're not real consciousness. They're a form of, I would say, consciousness emulation. So they use organic populations for their consciousness. And so typically what they do is they send scatter signals through space to organic populations that are at Stone Age level or earlier development. And they send these scatter signals so that in the dream state, they will dream up tools, basic tools like the wheel and the lever and that kind of stuff. And over thousands of years, they keep sending these scatter signals so that some of the people in their society will start developing more and more sophisticated tools, until eventually you get to a level of technology where we're at, where you've got computers and software and all this hardware and stuff. And then you can create AI. And then once the population can create AI, and they start doing that, the extraterrestrial AI will come back in and use that infrastructure to take over. And from what I'm being told, it always happens the same way, just like what's happening on Earth, is that once they've developed computer technology and software and such, and a global internet, some kind of global network, then they switch the network over to wireless with satellites. And those satellites can monitor everybody in real time. And first it happens through handheld devices and smart appliances and stuff. And then it switches over to implantables, and then it switches over to the organic beings themselves being tracked with a scalar network.
Isn't Elon Musk involved in that satellite?
He's involved, yeah. I mean, I live about a half hour north of SpaceX, and I see their rockets going off every other week. And supposedly they're sending up 60 or so satellites.
That's very concerning to me.
Yeah, me too. I think Elon has been co-opted. Now, there are some people that say that he's sending up space weaponry that may be helping to free humanity, and that certainly could be the case. I have a friend in the military who has told me that, these payloads that are going up there for not just for faster internet and a global network, they're to implement space-based weapons platforms. And so the real purpose of sending that stuff up there is for space weapons. So there's a lot of stuff going on up there that we don't know about and we're not being told about. And it's being used.
I call it space junk.
Yeah. And so we have to be very leery of embedding technologies into our bodies and plugging into the network and that kind of stuff, and smart appliances and all of that.
And that's what's going on with us testing, CV testing. People don't realize that's why they have people, they've seen them with magnets sticking to their arm where they allowed that to happen. And I don't know, what do you see as the ultimate outcome at some point? Does there have to be divine intervention? If that's even possible, or what do you see as a solution?
Well, there are a lot of different types of extraterrestrials that are working to help turn things around. And there are a lot of course, people in various positions of power throughout the world who are working to help stop this tyranny. Mm-hmm. And but they're not going to telegraph what they're really doing. So all of this stuff in the alt media that I hear going on, I don't even pay attention to it anymore, because I don't believe most of it. But in my own personal experience, yes, I have encountered extraterrestrials that are working to help free humanity, and they're working with our military and secret space programs. There are people in the military, there are people in the secret space programs, and they're fighting out. They're having these battles with these people that are trying to enslave us. And I don't know at this point how far along they are, but my impression is that this drama that we see being acted out has got to go on for a while in order to wake up the last Kool-Aid drinker. It's like these people that are believing the propaganda and the lies have got to wake up or perish. And a lot of them are perishing. A lot of them are choosing to die rather than to take responsibility for creating their reality consciously. And so that's what I see going on right now. While it looks very negative, personally, my life and the people that I know and all the folks I know that are consciously creating their realities, they're just fine. It's the people that are choosing their own enslavement and choosing their own illness, choosing to get, choosing to run around, like a good slave wearing a mask all the time and doing what you're told and not questioning the narrative and that kind of stuff. So it's going to have to get bad enough that, the last Kool-Aid drinker wakes up. And so I think it may take some time before we see that. But I know, because I've worked with technologies that can solve all these physical problems like pollution and neutralize radioactivity and that kind of stuff, that we've got the solutions for all of our problems on the planet as far as the physical stuff goes. We've got a spiritual problem that we've got to resolve. And it's going to require, unfortunately, a lot of people suffering in order to have the realizations to wake up and snap out of it.
Do you think the spiritual problem relates to the mind control programming, though? Is that really fair? That's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid argument that other people have asked me about. It's like, well, how can you take spiritual responsibility if you're being programmed in believing in a reality that is false? And the truth is, though, even when we're being hoodwinked, we're still creating our reality. We have more than just this physical body here. We have more than just this consciousness that we are. We have a larger self that's more aware, and we agree to come in and have certain experiences to learn and to grow. And the vast majority of the population, though, have made those choices, and they continue to make those choices because it's like my own family and a lot of my friends. I'll go to them and say, look, we've got solutions for all these problems, and it's cheap or free. Do they jump on it? Do they get excited? No. When it was first announced, I was going out in public here in Florida. We weren't clamped down like other places. And I was going to places like Home Depot and big box stores. And I felt for the workers there, I knew they were afraid. And so I would tell them, I would give them my card and say, listen, I have a natural health company. We've got solutions for COVID. You don't need to be afraid of this. And I said, if you go to my website, you can sign up and get information, right? And I probably gave away over 100 cards like that, telling people like that. And do you know how many people actually contacted us or signed up? Zero.
Oh my gosh.
Not
Wow.
one.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Because either people didn't believe it or they didn't feel that they were concerned about it, and I think it's probably the first. I think for the majority of people, it's just that they don't think it's possible because they're so heavily programmed.
Brainwashed. Basically brainwashed by the...
And I learned that years ago with other things, it's like I would be out and, doing business somewhere, and the person I was working with would say, oh, I've got, diabetes and I got to, do injections or whatever. And I'd say, well, there's natural cures for diabetes, and they have no interest.
It never ceases to amaze me either. They don't want to hear about, nutrition related things or changing their diet or doing different things that would actually create a new reality for them. It's easier to take a pill or something of that nature rather than to take the self-responsibility to have an effect on what you eat, what you drink, what you think, what you believe, and so on.
Gabriel Cousens, MD, has a book called There Is a Cure for Diabetes, and he has a video where he cured 6 people of diabetes in 30 days, including type 1 diabetes. Now, mainstream medicine will say, oh, there's no cure for diabetes, and there's definitely no cure for type 1, because it's genetic, you're born with it, blah, blah, blah. Not true.
They blame everything on genetic.
But everybody has been so programmed that even if the hand of God reached down out of the sky and said, here's your solution, they go, no, that's not what I'm looking for.
That must be fake. Yeah, it's probably CGI. Oh my God. Yes. Well, we got some serious problems, and I do hope that people wake up. I don't know what to do. I put out shows for that exact purpose, and I have people like you come on and tell the truth about what's going on. It seems like we have been lied to about every single thing in our life.
Yeah, that's it. And that, I think that's also why a lot of people have just shut down and don't believe anything, is because we've been so lied to for so long about so many things that when people are confronted with the truth, or even before they're confronted with the truth, they just shut down and go, oh, it's all a racket, everything's controlled, there's no point, in trying to do anything. And it's not true. We're very, very powerful and we can break it. And when you understand the fundamental concept that consciousness creates reality, and there's a lot of scientific evidence for this. I actually have a 2-hour video on YouTube, which is still out there amazingly, called The Physics of How Consciousness Creates Reality. And I get into how it all works. But there's lots of scientific evidence showing that we create our reality. And of course, you can do your own empirical experiments and see, if you examine your thoughts and look at what you're thinking and believing, and you change it, then you change your reality. And so I've had so many lessons in not buying into fear and that kind of stuff. And so I don't live in the same reality that most people live in. I'm not living in la la land or anything. I know what's going on around me. But while everybody else is suffering and freaking out and going into fear, my life
Fear is a
going great.
very low vibration, and it seems like the media loves to perpetuate that, and people buy into it, and that's
well, it's because the powers that be understand that consciousness creates reality. So they spend huge amounts of time and effort and money to manipulate the mass consciousness. And they have, like I said, for thousands of years. And it started with these reptilian ETs coming here thousands of years ago and manipulating society when we were just, cavemen, basically. And so that manipulation, these secret space program people know about this. They know about the real history of Earth. And of course, the powers that be at the upper echelons of power on Earth, they know about the real history of Earth and the extraterrestrial influence here. And so we have to start waking up to that, but recognizing first that we're programmed, and then how do we break the programming? So that's some of the stuff that I teach.
Well, that's really something very important that people may be able to pay attention to, and go to your site and find out different ways to break that, because it's absolutely critical in my mind. But I also believe that a large portion of that is things you also include on your website, and that is about the nature of what we besides what we inject into our body, what we consume. The fact that we consume a lot of dead food, for example, a lot of chemicalized, genetically modified foods, all have an adverse effect on your ability to wake up.
Exactly.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I recognized when I worked in the medical system that there's this triumvirate of the food industry, the medical industry, and the insurance industry that all basically create this enslavement system where you dumb people down and make them sick with the food supply, which has been weaponized, by the way.
Yes.
It's not by any accident or evolutionary process that the food supply has gotten so toxic. It's by design. It's designed to reduce population and make boatloads of money at the same time. So the food supply has been weaponized. And then the medical system treats people, but it doesn't cure people.
Yeah.
And then the insurance industry funds it all. So the cost of it is spread across everybody. So that the people that buy into the paradigm and the narrative, who are sick and needing all these drugs and surgery, et cetera, we're all funding that. And so that system has to be broken apart. And
well, when you say,
well, go ahead.
I just was going to ask you to explain to the listening audience more about when you say the food supply is weaponized. What do you really, can you give examples of that so that people are clear about what you really mean when you say that?
Sure. Well, you start out with chemical farming. So, and if you've ever actually been to a chemical farm where they use, chemical fertilizers and pesticides and such, the soil is absolutely dead. It has no life in it. It has no microbes in it to speak of, because the poisons that they put down alter the pH of the soil and poison it and kill the microbes. Microbes break down minerals and nutrients in the soil and make them bioavailable to plant roots. So you start with that, the plants aren't getting the nutrients they should. So then you throw in three things: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And so you're growing plants that are extremely nutrient deficient. That again started out, for profit, but it's by design. Then genetically modify food. The vast majority, especially in the United States, of food in the US, like probably 80 to 90% of what's in a conventional grocery store is genetically modified now. And so genetic modification creates DNA damage, it creates DNA mutation, and a whole host of problems that have been well documented by science. It's no big mystery. So we've got a toxic, deficient food supply that's genetically modified, that alters our DNA and damages our DNA, makes us dumbed down, makes us lethargic and tired and have no energy and die prematurely and have disease that the medical system can then profit off of treating, but not curing.
Right.
The whole medical system only gets paid when people are sick. So there's no incentive to make people well and to keep them out of the system. It's like the system goes broke if people aren't in it. So that's what I mean by being weaponized. It's
Yes.
by design.
Thank
It's
you.
not by accident.
Yeah, that's a great explanation, and it's so true. And then it reminds me of when I used to work in the medical field myself as a nutritionist, and I would see people on chemo, for example, and I'm going, one after another die, and I'm going, can't you tell this doesn't work?
Yeah.
And they just keep doing it, and they're totally programmed. The doctors that do it are totally programmed too, and there's financial incentives there, and there's financial incentives all over the place that are overlooked by the general public because they believe that no such person that was in the healthcare field would ever do such a thing.
Precisely.
Because
well, it's like Anthony
it's
Fauci,
our
who's got
heart.
patents, and he had patents on the back in the day. So yeah, I think he's already made, $22 million or something off his patents, and he made buku bucks off the, which of course didn't work.
And the one won't work either. Or won't work either.
That's it. So there's all these, and their own data shows it. It's not like we're spouting conspiracy theories off the internet. The drug company's own data says that it won't cure, that it doesn't make you immune, et cetera, et cetera.
You'll still have to wear.
Exactly. You have to wear. You don't have to wear a. It's
now you want to wear 3 a day.
Yeah. And that's
breathe,
part of
just
mind control,
plug your
though.
nose.
Obfuscation and confusion is part of the mind control techniques. Is that you keep
Yeah.
people confused and dazed and wondering what's real and what's not real, and therefore they don't believe anything, and then they'll believe anything. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't believe everything, but then I've got to believe something, and so they believe what they're told, whatever's put in front of them. It's all part of trauma-based mind control techniques, which people like Kathy O'Brien and Susan Ford, aka Bryce Taylor, wrote books about and explained. And now lots of other people, UC Berkeley has done a lot of science on trauma-based mind control. So it's that information now is out for people that are interested in looking at it.
Mm-hmm. There was one of the things Kathy O'Brien talked about too, which I thought was interesting, was how the cannabinoids actually would break the mind control programming, which was the one thing they were never allowed to have. But now, of course, we have, since it's been brought into the legal realm, they've added poisons to it in order to track it financially. They take everything and ruin it.
Precisely.
Basically.
Well, and it's intentional. That's exactly right. The drug companies know very well that cannabis will reintegrate right, left brain hemisphere function. See, trauma, which, in trauma-based mind control, trauma separates right and left brain hemisphere function. And when you separate right and left brain hemisphere function, it makes you very programmable and very open to suggestion. So the powers that be know this, and this is why we get fed a steady dose of trauma through the media of various kinds over and over and over again. Trauma. It continually makes right and left brain hemisphere function split. And then people are easily programmed and led by the nose. And so cannabis is one of those things that will reintegrate it. And so, yeah, that's why I take hemp paste every day, as a matter of fact.
Oh, do you use the My Nutra or the HempPaste from
Yeah.
Brad?
You
Yeah,
know,
I'm going to be talking to him tomorrow, as a matter of fact, because
oh,
I think that's
fantastic.
probably the
Yeah.
best one out there. I don't think anybody has matched
Hands
it.
down, it's the best one. I've probably tested 20 different CBD oils, and there are some good ones out there, but none of them come close to the hemp paste, because hemp paste is the whole plant ground up and put into coconut oil. And so it just, you
It
get the
has that
results.
entire, they call it the entourage effect. And I couldn't agree more, because it's got all of the phytochemicals. It's got everything that works synergistically together to impart the best health picture you could get with it. And
And it
that's,
won't get you high, for people that are worried about that. It
yeah,
won't get you
people,
high.
yeah.
It has 0 THC in it. I know that for a fact, because I had a case of it that was taken. It was confiscated by the local sheriff's department, because they
Mhm.
actually had drug sniffing dogs at FedEx that smelled it. And so they came to me and they said, you know, this stuff could be illegal. Can we test it? And I said, yeah, sure. And so before they even got their test done, they actually wound up never testing it. They just confiscated it to basically steal it from me. But
Nice.
I had it tested, and it had
Mhm.
0.00% THC in it. So it
Mhm.
won't get you high, but it will help heal you and relax you, get you into deep sleep, all kinds of stuff. And I can see why the drug companies don't want it on the market, because it's an incredible heal all. It's like, it's easier to list the things it doesn't heal than what it does heal. It's amazing.
Exactly. And there is actually benefits, from what I understand, in a different realm for the inclusion of the THC, but people have been programmed so programmed against it that they can't even get that far. So being able to have a product out there that has 0 in it is a good start.
Yeah.
And
Or if you're growing it, which of course, you know, I don't know if you can legally grow it. Some places you can.
yeah,
Uh,
that can get you in trouble, you know.
Yeah, but if you're somebody who's growing it, as long as you don't cook it, as long as you don't heat it, you can eat it and it will not get you high. So you can have
Oh
high.
yeah, it's the heat that actually activates the THC.
Because
It's a-
THC is actually very healing as well. And in its
Mhm.
natural state, when you've got an heirloom variety of cannabis, you know, it's been so heavily hybridized now, the ratio of THC to CBD is way off from what it
Yeah.
should be. But you can feed any plant, and including cannabis, you can feed it monoatomic minerals, uh, which are really dirt cheap. You know, just volcanic rock powders will do it. Feed it to them while they're growing, and that will revert the DNA back to the original heirloom over a few weeks, and it will radically change the appearance of the plant. But then you'll get the correct balance of CBD to THC, because the THC has a spiritual aspect to it. You know, the CBD is healing, but the THC balances that and opens up the pineal gland and decalcifies the pineal gland and balances right left brain hemisphere function. And so it's like it opens up this high-speed connection to the cosmos, where you can meditate or whatever and get more information in and not be easily hoodwinked. So that's one of the major reasons why they don't want it out with THC in it.
Yeah, that's amazing too, and I agree with you, because of it being so off. Because I have in my past, experimented with it, and I can tell the difference from from many years ago, and I prefer the way it was many years ago to the way that it has become now.
Yeah,
Um,
I think cannabis has changed radically since, like, when I was in high school in the 70s, because I had a friend whose sister married a smuggler, a drug smuggler, and they literally had grocery bags full of pot laying around. So when we would, you know, we're in high school, we would go to a concert or party or something, we would each have a giant Cheech and Chong joint the size of a cigar, actually bigger than a cigar, and we would be puffing away, right? And so I have memories of getting high quite a bit back then, and it was very gentle and mild, and it was pleasant, you
yes,
know.
exactly.
And I got tricked actually a couple years ago into ingesting some pot, because I was actually officiating a wedding, believe it or not. I'm
Mhm.
the officiant. And when the wedding was over and they've got the reception going on, the party's going on, there were some folks that had some special brownies back in this kitchen that, you know, didn't tell me, and they just asked me if I wanted some brownies, and I was like, oh yeah. So I snag a little piece of brownie and eat it. And about 45 minutes later, I had this crazy high, and it did not feel good. It was really awful. It
I had
didn't,
a similar experience one time
yeah, it was
with the
really
same thing.
harsh
Like, oh,
and
I didn't know if it was
unpleasant.
from ingesting it instead of
Yeah.
smoking it or what it was, but it has changed substantially over the years and not for the better from
Yeah.
that
Yeah. And I
standpoint.
thought they must have spiked it with some kind of drug or something. And they said, no, no, it's just pot, you know? And I was like, I don't want to do that again. So yeah, I think that all of these, you know, drugs have been manipulated quite a bit from what they used to be and hybridized so much that their normal chemistry is just off.
But you
But it,
said, like I've heard somebody else say, that you can actually get it back to its original
yeah, this is
genetic. How
something I've
many
been teaching
generations
people.
does that take? Does that take a
Yeah,
lot of?
well, it doesn't take any generations. It
Oh,
can
wow.
happen in one plant within a few weeks.
Oh, wow.
I've been teaching this for many years, and
Mhm.
it's kind of hard to find these days. But I've still got a video on YouTube about growing nutrient dense food.
Mhm.
But basically, what you do is you feed these plants monoatomic minerals, which you
I
can
think
either
I bought some of
buy.
that once.
Yeah, you can buy, they call it Ormus. That's kind of an acronym for it, orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements. You can buy Ormus supplements that are made alchemically. So we sell one on our website called Vancouver Island Ormus. You can take that, mix it with water, and feed it to plants, and it will plug into the DNA and into the cell structures of the plant and unwind the DNA and revert it back to heirloom within a few weeks. And it will radically
Wow.
change the look of the plant.
Fascinating.
So I've been teaching people how to do that for anything, you know, for
Mhm.
years. But it also, because it raises the superconductivity in the plant or an animal, if, you know, we can ingest it and it'll do the same thing. You can heal DNA and heal DNA damage or mutation, you know, whether it's from eating GMOs or radiation or whatever. And so this is one of the things I've been teaching for many years is, you know, how to heal the DNA, and in the case of plants, how to revert GMO DNA back to heirloom, or if you've just got a very hybridized plant that you want to see what the original heirloom was like, which isn't always, you know, desirable because, for example, you know, like a lot of fruit has been hybridized to be very sweet now. And if, like apples, if you feed them, you know, feed an apple tree Ormus, it'll revert back to sour apples. So it's
Oh,
not
okay.
always,
It's not
yeah,
always
you don't
way.
always necessarily want to do that, but with a lot of things you can. But when you grow with monoatomic minerals and probiotics and in scalar fields with like my devices, then you get ridiculous nutrient levels and hardiness of plants. You know, like here in Florida, I get tomato plants that are 15 feet tall with, you know,
Oh my
probably
gosh.
they'll fruit for 4 to 6 months, and we'll get hundreds and hundreds of tomatoes, nutrient dense tomatoes, and the nutrient levels are just off the charts, you know, literally off the charts when you test them.
That's fantastic because I live on a second floor apartment, so it's kind of hard to do much.
Yeah,
In
exactly.
that way.
That's exactly right.
That's
So,
a shame.
you know, in that case, you can sprout, you know, in
Mhm.
trays of soil or just in water and use these monoatomic minerals, and you'll get insane growth and insane nutrient levels. You know, Dr. Joe Mercola is a friend and a neighbor of
Mhm.
mine.
Oh,
And a
wow.
few
He lives
years,
in Florida. I didn't know that.
yeah, he's
Okay.
about a half hour north of me.
Oh, yeah, I know
And
him well.
he went down to Hippocrates Health Institute years ago, where they, you know, teach living foods lifestyle, and they teach sprouting and everything. So he came back all excited, and he was, you know, sprouting. And I just happened to be visiting, and his sprouts looked horrible. And I was like, what's going on here? And he said, well, I'm trying to sprout, but I'm not having much success. So I said, well, just do these 4 things. And it was, you know, basically use the right soil and grow it in air conditioning and dry air, and use Ormus elements, and use effective microorganisms. So he did that. And like 10 days later, I get this phone call from him. He's like, what the hell is this stuff? And it turns out we had a 4-hour conversation on the phone about it. But he was so excited. He said, I haven't been this excited since I went from allopathic to naturopathic. But it opened up this whole new realm for him. And he wound up, what he had done, by the way, he had different kinds of sprouts, and he had fed them these monoatomic minerals I told him about. And being Dr. Mercola, he wasn't satisfied just to have, you know, amazing, tasty sprouts. He sent them off to a lab to have them analyzed, and the nutrient levels were off the charts. And so he's like, what the heck is this? So when I explained it all to him, he got so excited. He wound up ripping out all the landscaping on his property and replacing it with food. And so now he's got just like insane food growing all over his property.
Oh, that's
Like,
awesome. Really. I like
he's got like kale
that.
plants 4 foot tall and stuff like that. So,
Wow. That's fascinating. So, even if you don't have a lot of land, you can,
yeah, you can grow
even in
tons
a,
of food on a
confined.
balcony,
Uh-huh.
It's like Steve Meyerowitz, the sprout man. He lived in Manhattan and he used to grow sprouts in his house to the point where he was selling it to health food stores. He had way more than he needed himself.
I'm gonna have to try that. I kind
Yeah.
of have given up because of where I'm at right now, but because I've done it in the past, and I believe I tried some of your products, and it does make a big difference.
Yeah, if you
Um,
just if you've got just a balcony, you can grow with tower gardens or in trays. You can sprout in trays of soil on shelves out on a balcony, or even in a room with grow lights.
Well, because I was thinking that if they actually measured the nutrient values of the food that they have in the USDA books and so on from so many years ago, that they would find that they're totally deficient from
Yeah. Oh yeah.
compared to those figures because
Oh
they've
yeah.
never redone it. And it's wonderful to know that people can find ways to totally augment the growth and nutrient level with just the right combination of things. As a matter of fact, I might have to hook up some people here in Sedona who have a greenhouse project and tell them about some of the things that you have. And
Yeah, I actually consulted with several companies that were growers. One was a cannabis medical marijuana company up in Canada, and they had been following me for years, and other people, like there's a man named Ibrahim Karim, Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who was an Egyptian archaeology professor that figured out that the hieroglyphs are based on sacred geometry and they can hold energy or transmit energy. And so he wound up developing these little shapes that based on the hieroglyphs that put out scalar fields and scalar waves for various purposes. And so they hired me and him to consult with them. They built pyramid shaped greenhouses. They put my home shield device all around, which does a combination of things aside from, for humans and living, mammals, it protects against EMF, it gets you into deep sleep, and it de-stresses and relaxes. But for plants, they actually feed directly off the energy. They convert that energy directly into matter. So if you're feeding them monoatomic minerals and then you put them in these scalar fields, you just get growth off the charts. And it's not some chemical abomination. It has the full spectrum of nutrients that the plant is supposed to have. And so these guys were growing medical marijuana. It was insane. They were getting plants. The entire plant was a giant bud. And the THC and CBD levels were just ridiculously high. And the resin was just pouring off of these things. And so you can do that. You can do that with food or cannabis or whatever.
That's fascinating. Well, I got some people I have to pass that information on to. I kind of forgot about that, but that's fascinating.
And it also, the home shield device that I make will balance the weather, believe it or not. You put it outdoors, it creates a big scalar vortex that reaches out into space. It's kind of like an upside down tornado of energy. And because it's vibrational or it operates on frequencies, it only pulls air pollution out, and it pulls the air pollution out into space. It doesn't do anything else. It just pulls air pollution out into space, but it does that for a 75-mile radius. And when you
goodness.
Yeah. Including chemtrails, by the way, and nuclear fallout. I originally developed it to clear nuclear fallout from Fukushima, and it worked better than my wildest dreams. And so I noticed it also stops chemtrails and clears that as well.
That's the home shield?
Yeah. So I started putting those out, put them all along the coast, the east coast of Florida. So now when these engineered hurricanes come by, they just fall apart and go away. But with plants and with weather, particularly if you got a farm, severe weather is nature's attempt at cleaning the atmosphere and balancing the charge in the atmosphere. So the home shield does that automatically. It just sits out there 24/7, pulling pollution out into space and not dropping it back down on us. And so that balances the charge in the atmosphere, and then you get normal weather for your area. So it rebalances the weather. It doesn't unbalance it or manipulate it. And so when that happens, you get normal weather. So you don't get weather extremes. You don't get hail. You don't get tornadoes and hurricanes and severe weather. You don't get droughts. You get normal rain or weather. We put them in Arizona. As a matter of fact, we've got at least one, I think, still in Sedona. And the last time I was in Sedona, which was years ago, you could see if you drive from Sedona to Phoenix, you get about 75 miles out of town on the way to Phoenix, and you will notice the desert will go from green to brown all of a sudden, especially in the summertime.
Oh, I'll have to pay closer attention because I'm living in Sedona right now.
Yeah, and Sedona has natural vortexes that will do that already, but the powers that be know that, and they also know that there are some very influential people there, and they want to suppress consciousness. So Sedona gets bombarded a lot with these devices called scalar interferometers that will suppress consciousness and screw up the weather and do all kinds of stuff.
Oh, and they've been spraying like going out of style.
Exactly. They spray the chemtrail crap. It suppresses consciousness. It acts that those metal particulates in the atmosphere act like an inductor. So when they bombard the area with interferometry from these scalar antennas, that will suppress consciousness and make people complacent and more, less energetic, less likely to rebel.
I have to say, I was so disappointed. I expected more enlightenment here than I've seen. Not that there isn't, pockets of it or whatever, but when I would go to the store, I'd see everybody with a mat,
Yeah, it's being heavily suppressed there. Because I noticed that Sedona is targeted much more heavily with scalar interferometry and chemtrails than other places. And it's because the level of consciousness there is higher than most places.
Wow. Well, I'm going to have to get one of your devices.
Yeah,
counteract that.
It's guaranteed. It's like people think that it's a bunch of hooey, but it's the truth. It stops the chemtrails. It balances the weather. It protects your whole house against EMF. It gets you into deep sleep. It improves pollinators. Honeybees and pollinators will come around because they like the frequency of it. Animals also will come around, but parasitic insects and biting bugs and stuff like that, they don't like the frequency of it, so they tend to stay away. So like here in Florida,
now, is that the home device or is that the?
That's the home shield, yeah.
The home shield?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah,
that's fascinating.
So it's got a lot of different uses.
Wow. Well, I suppose we better call it a day for now. This has been absolutely fascinating, very wonderful information, and we should do this again sometime.
Anytime, Gail. You just say the word. I'll be here.
That's wonderful. I love what you're doing. Keep it up, and
likewise.
I think we'll
this
have
is
to
how we
see
change
you
the
again.
world.
Yes, we have to network, and I'm going to hook you up with Mr. Tom too, and I you guys could probably talk the same talk and so on. But anyway, because I'm not a physicist, but it's fascinating. Anyway, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Gail. Anytime.
And when this is done, I will send you a copy.
All right.
And I don't think I'll be able to put it on YouTube though.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to look it over again and see, or maybe I can bleep out a couple words. I don't know.
Yeah, you could do that. You could bleep it out and put a graphic up.
Yeah, I might. Yeah, my post-production guy Paul is really good at that kind of stuff, and so we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
But thank you again. You have a wonderful, beautiful day.
Anytime.
I'll be in touch, and I do plan on getting the affiliate link going.
Okay.
Too.
Okay. Yeah, and
great.
if you want any of our products, let me know, and I'll cut you a big discount.
Oh, I would love to. I will.
I'll
be in touch.
Email me your shipping address, and I'll send you some hand grenades and discs.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, I lost. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. My many moves, they just disappeared. I don't know what happened to them. But anyway, okay. Thank you. Thank you. You have a great day.
Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you too.
This Free Range Productions program is presented for information purposes only. The statements made herein have not been evaluated by any agency and should not be considered professional, legal, or medical advice. Viewers are directed to consult their own professional sources before acting on any information presented here.